about 5 years or so seriously, although we kept cows for maybe 10 years. But for the last 5 years or so, I've been doing it more seriously, raising cattle. We have now 7 milk cows. I have 4 in milk right now. We just had a birth day before yesterday, so we were drinking colostrum this morning. And we just acquired a fantastic bull, actually, finally. So let me take about half of the time to talk about just milk, because there's some very pertinent issues and advocacy that needs to be transmitted around that. Then I'll go into just making a basic, like, farm easy yogurt. See if we can do that. Okay, so in making yogurt, what kind of milk is ideal and where do you get it? I have only made yogurt from raw, unprocessed, unpasteurized milk from cows grazing on fresh green grass. And the authorities that I've looked into really say that this is the superior product in all measures of health. That means for the animals and for ourselves as well. Goat milk, similarly, it's ideal if it's raw, unprocessed, and the goats are grazing on their natural diet. A little bit about the nutrition. Raw milk contains many fat-soluble nutrients like vitamins A, vitamin D, and vitamin D. These are very assimilable when they come to us, dissolved in the butter fats, basically, of the milk. And those are partially, at least, destroyed in the pasteurization process, which brings milk up to 160 and then takes it back down in the fridge. The green grass is a real crucial aspect with these livestock. It's what they were evolved to feed on, not grains. And so we have issues with pathogenic bacteria, putrefying bacteria, and fluctuations in pH in the rumen and gut of the livestock if you start feeding them soy and corn, like it's starting to happen. Well, it's happening for a good amount of time with a lot of dairying, not so much on this island. Also, raw milk, multiple enzymes, antibodies, minerals, lactic acid producing bacteria. They are all designed by nature to establish healthy tissue growth and immune systems for infant mammals. So basically, when we're all born, we have the lactase, we have the ability to make use of milk. And that's how it works for all of us mammals, and it can continue to work with cow's milk, as I'll get into. So unfortunately, the sale of raw milk in Hawaii is illegal, except for on-farm consumption. So you can go to a farm and buy raw milk, but you got to drink it there. We're one of the dozen or so states that at this point is lagging significantly behind, because there's a lot of flux in the legislation and litigation in a lot of the different states. And so you can get a real snapshot if you go to the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund and look up their state-by-state list. You can also go to the Wise Traditions Quarterly. Anybody who's really interested in these issues should become a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation, and you get this subscription for free. It's a $40 membership. This comes out quarterly. They've got a legislative update in the back, so we're getting really the current information about what's happening with the Hirschbergers and this and that in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Generally, things are moving towards more legality in and around being able to obtain raw milk. Not yet here in Hawaii. History of raw milk prohibition in the U.S. is a fascinating and instructive history in some of the very key implementation of industrial agriculture, tying in with pasteurization and dirty milk requiring pasteurization rather than cleaning up farms. It's information that everybody should really have, and it's put together really well by Ron Schmidt, our naturopath, in this book, The Untold Story of Milk. And I would really love to just spend an hour sometime just transmitting the history of pasteurization and the persecution of raw milk producers in this country, because it's still going on right now, in California and lots of places all the time. So The Untold Story of Milk, a really great read. So some small farms in prohibition states such as Hawaii provide the opportunity for raw milk devotees to express their values through long-term co-ownership of herds of milk cows. Herd shareholders receive regular dividends of milk. These farms can usually be found through the Weston A. Price Foundation or the Raw Milk Institute, but there's no WAPF chapter here on this island right now. So we're out there looking for somebody who wants to really take on being a chapter leader. That would be maintaining a list of the places that you can get raw, nutrient-dense foods and making that available to people who contact you through the WAPF website. So whether you're going out to buy a cow or looking for a raw milk dairy, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund can help you establish wise and healthy procedures. They have things like this, the Consumer's Safe Handling Guide, Raw Milk Production Handbook. So these are real filled with the facts about how to get into the business yourself or how to check out a dairy if you're looking for raw milk. I would suggest that if you are looking at a farm to obtain raw milk, make sure that they want you to or will allow you to come along with the whole milking procedure of these animals that you're now going to be co-owning. You get to watch how they milk, you get to ask questions, see what their hygiene program is, particularly animal health, and then also refrigeration. You want to see some kind of a provision for a quick drop down of temperature. With those three things in the ballpark, you got a good healthy product. In addition, the lactic acid bacteria inside of the milk actually suppress the putrefying bacteria from being able to grow. If all those three factors are handled, it's really quite safe. There have been more foodborne illness disease outbreaks from pasteurized milk than there have been from raw milk. So if you don't use raw milk, the next best choice in Hawaii is a real difficulty. You can get locally raised milk from, it's a mixture of island dairy and cloverleaf dairy, gets brought into Hilo, and these are mostly grass-fed animals because we've got the grass year-round. Okay, it gets mixed in Hilo, pasteurized and homogenized and sold at KTA under Mountain Apple brand. Unfortunately, Island Dairy a couple of years ago, heading in the right direction by wanting to grow their own silage, put about 700 acres into oats and sorghum and corn, but the corn they chose is one of those glyphosate-resistant, modified varieties. So that's being grown on the island right now by the hundreds of acres in Hamakua, and they feed that as silage to their cows when they come into milk. And so that's getting into the cow system and into the system of milk for those cows, and it's being mixed with cloverleaf from a kapa'au. So really, for myself, I wouldn't drink or use that milk, the Mountain Apple brand, unfortunately, because it is local and it's mostly on grass. Maybe there's a way that we can exert pressure on Island Dairy to switch that way. So it really leaves you stuck for finding good milk, and that's why I had to kind of tell that whole story, because there's not really much good milk to be found. The rest is brought in from the mainland, reconstituted, and that's all fed on soy and corn. Cattle contribute 2% of the U.S.'s global warming gases. A lot of that has to do with the industrialization of the feed raising, and the moving the milk back and forth, and the processing requires a lot of fuels. In addition, what's been found out is that feeding the animals on soy and corn gives them a bad belly, and they got lots of farts and burps, and there's methane in it, much more so than if they're fed on grass. The only study I found says that you can reduce it by 20%, but it may be much more so than that. There's a lot of information coming out right now from the Savior Institute, or there's a woman who's got a book, Cows Save the Planet, about that if you get your livestock on green grass in a holistic or intensive or mob grazing system, which basically means have them on grass and move them often, then what's happening out there is basically the manure and the saliva from those animals is inoculating the soil with nutrients and with lactic acid bacteria and other organisms, and really promoting a rapid growth of the soil food web. All those little good guys, the fungi and the bacteria and the microarthropods, and then when the worms show up, you've done it right. And then the grasses, the diverse grasses. And so when we've got this going on, that whole biota is really pulling a lot of carbon out of the atmosphere and sequestering it. So that's what she said in her book, is actually sustainable dairying can actually heal the land, and it can certainly heal the land here in Hawaii. I've seen what they do to the cane grass down at my place. They transmute this green cane grass that can be a pain into liquid gold, you know, and if you just get them off of it in time for it to regrow, it can be a real healing system and concentrate nutrients for us.